my question is mainly aimed at Vanessa. Since you're so certain to vote no, what would the government have to change in order for your vote to be a yes?
Thank you so much for your question. I'll just disclose to everybody and, of course, media watching, I'm not a certain no. I'm very much undecided, like many of my peers and my sisters and brothers within community. I think when it comes to the Voice to Parliament and the referendum discussion happening right now, we need to recognise there's 3 campaigns. There's very much a yes side, a no side, and a very strong racist no side that's pushing an agenda that's quite harmful to our communities, and it's quite harmful around non-Indigenous people pushing that political discourse within our communities as well. I think when it comes to the referendum and what would actually see me be a complete yes is, well, what is our government of the day proving to our people to demonstrate that there actually is substantial power within this? Now, I can recognise, because we're told it every single day, it holds no power, it's just advisory, shh, settle down, it's just consultancy, relax everybody, it's just consultancy, shh. But that doesn't have to be listened to. And as someone on the receiving end, and as a survivor of family policing here in this country, I don't want to hear more crumbs discussions anymore. I don't want to hear more advisories. I want to see real change for my people. That's all I want to see. And it's really hard when you're on the receiving end with community and you can recognise, you know, we hear this all the time, one bit of progress is better than no progress at all. But we have been told this rhetoric all the time. We have been told it. Everyone says after 1 death in custody, 2 deaths in custody, 3, there'll be no more deaths in custody. And then we wake up and there's another Aboriginal deaths in custody. We say there's going to be no more child removal, yet we carry one of the most highest rates of child removal here in this country that disproportionately impacts First Nations people. We talk about land displacements, yet we continue to harm the land. We say if you're a no, you're a racist. We say if you're a yes, well, you're supporting mining companies and Rio Tinto that's funding the Yes campaign. It's a really nuanced discussion and it's really hard to have this conversation with the wider Australia because as First Nations people, we haven't had the opportunity to reconcile with what do we actually really want. And the reality is, do we want a voice? Absolutely. But we've always had a voice, but we've just never been listened to. And being told that it's an advisory doesn't give us that power. Darcy?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And Vanessa, I totally agree with you. I will happily say I'm voting yes, but the reasons I'm voting yes is because not only have I seen how local, regional and state voices work and create that change, I do agree with you the fact that there have been a number of issues that have been raised by local, state and regional and state voices that have been ignored, and that, you know, we are past acknowledgements and good intentions, and it's time for action. And that at no point, you know, if we vote no, there might not be that action. We don't know yet. This is again sitting in the ether. But again, it is about community having a voice and making sure we create that systemic and sustainable change for our community across the board. And this is around us knowing our Aboriginal ways of being, doing. You know, this is our life. So for us to be able to have a voice, and yes, the consultancy perspective, we can make some form of change, but we need to be listened to. And I totally agree that we have not been listened to for a very long time, and at time now is for action to be listened to. So now saying that I was a yes voter, I probably do sit on the fence because I want to be listened to. I want my kids, my family.
You say you've changed your mind on this panel?
I have, yes.
And I just think that's extraordinary. Why?
Just to sit in the middle, because Vanessa raised a really good point, is that, you know, we highest rates of child protection, 541 Aboriginal deaths in custody since the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. You know, this is, if we can have the conversation and actually be listened to and not just have those, oh yes, oh that's, oh you good point, but it's moving past acknowledgements and good intentions and creating that action for systemic and sustainable change for my community, for my children, for my grandchildren and for the future. But, you know, if this voice is going to create that change, and I'd love to hear from the Assistant Minister, is that we will see better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people if we are listened to.
I will let Jed Kearney have a word.
I totally respect the views expressed here today, so thank you so much for being so honest and forthright and passionate. I really appreciate that. I think the first thing I would say is that this is not something that we dreamed up in government. This is not being imposed by the Labor government or by Anthony Albanese or by me or by anyone. This was a very generous request made of us by First Nations people through a very broad process of consultation, and that culminated in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which asked us to do this. And I feel that I'm responding to that very generous offer, and it could have been luck, you know. It is a very generous offer that was made, given 200 years of colonisation and what's happened. So I feel that we are responding to that. Secondly, I do believe that the voice being enshrined in the Constitution is the only way we can make sure that we actually do have a way to make sure it's heard. All those things that you said, Vanessa, all those reasons, like there's still deaths in custody, there's still children in out-of-home care, all those things, nothing is working, something needs to be different. And I really think that this offer from First Nations people to have a constitutionally recognised voice is that breaker. The third thing I just wanted to say is that there will be practical outcomes. The Minister has made it very clear that she wants to hear very practical ways that we can work on those issues.
But we have those practical outcomes that are already there. We have two foundational documents, a Royal Commission to Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, a National Bring 'em Home report. We have inquiries into impact of mining. I'm not completely against it because I do think it's a beautiful statement, but it's not even being enacted in full. We've gone from this
it's not
big
being
thing.
enacted. Exactly. And that's because we've had various governments that have come in from time to time and chosen to listen, chosen not to listen, chosen to listen, chosen not to listen.
And what can be guaranteed that we will be listened to? If you can promise me that we'll be listened to and the advice given will be really taken on board to be like, yep, we'll drive this through, I would be a yes tomorrow.
I think if it is constitutionally enshrined, that gives it that much impetus. There's just one last thing that I really want to say, and this is my big concern. If a no vote is successful after the at the referendum, the big risk is that the big winners out of that will be those people that want the status quo, that don't want change, or at worst are the ones that are being hateful and racist. That is my big concern about a no vote. The risk. It's not going to be.
Andrew, you're not one of the business
ones.
You're not one of the business groups who has a view. What's your personal view?
Well, look, I'm not here to present my personal view.
You won't say how you're voting?
No, I won't. It's my personal business. I'm entitled to that privacy as every other Australian is. And I'm not here to express my personal view. I'm here as a business representative. So, I mean, we've looked at it very carefully from a business point of view. We would say 4 things very quickly. We would say certainly that the process of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians is fundamentally important, something that business supports very strongly. Constitutional recognition, also something that I think around Australia, business groups and others support very strongly. We have hesitated. We are not going to advocate whether people vote yes or no.
Right.
But I think having an informed discussion, some very powerful interventions.
Do you think people want a second referendum just on recognition, like Peter Dutton suggested?
We don't want it. Why don't we First Nations people? We don't want a second.
You don't want another one?
We are struggling. We just spoke about mental health. We're coming up to Suicide Prevention Week. Our people are really struggling with the referendum process. It's been hard on our communities, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we are the political discourse, and when you're political conversation and you're already a group that's targeted and marginalised, and then you are that national conversation, the impact that it has on the ground for our communities is detrimental.
Absolutely.
And I just want to encourage to any mob that are watching tonight or who are out there who may find this, if you are struggling, lean on community. Whether you are yes or you are no or you're I don't know, you have a community, you are loved, and your sisters and brothers, myself included, there is no need to feel worried about expressing what you are going through because our priority is our people through this.
Do you agree that, because Peter Dutton has said that if this were to fail in 6 weeks' time and he was elected, there's a few things that have to happen first. He will have a referendum for constitutional recognition.
Peter Dutton can say what he wants to say, and good on him for saying and expressing his opinion about whatever it is. Probably the one thing I want to point out is that I totally agree with Vanessa, and, you know, yarning safe and strong for our mob here in Victoria, and again, the mob who know me pick up the phone. Very happy to have the conversation. But what I want to say is that what I don't like is when I see in the chambers or in question time is the parties allowing the serious amount of racism going within this community. And our community, again, is the topic of the conversation where we're having these really nasty people make serious comments and just ridiculous. This is about bringing us together and having a voice about talking about our issues, yet they want to make it a race issue and talk about this and this and make really just derogatory and discriminative comments, which is not appropriate. And our community, like our wider community, are the ones who are facing this. Good on for the people who can turn off after 5 o'clock. We're Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community every single day, and we're the ones who represent our community, luckily enough to be on, this television show.
And just one quick last point. A lot of the questions that I get, people sliding into my DMs, what can I do to contribute and help? And I'm going to say this now while it's here, it's recorded and it can be replayed, so I'll refer to this. Is as a non-Indigenous person, as a settler on these lands, remember that you also have a responsibility. And that responsibility means if you hear racism, you see racism, you call out racism, period. I'll share one quick yarn because it really left an impact on me, and it had me sitting in front of a racist no being like, I'm 100% voting yes, because I couldn't imagine the thought of us waking up to a no and those racists winning and what that could mean around white supremacy and our communities and the impact. However, what I will share is I sat in front of a panel at a well-prestiged university, I won't name it, but I sat in front of a university where they had yes supporters and no supporters, and the yes side had really strong, I'd say they contribute to the architecture of the voice, and we had the no side. And when I heard the no side speaking with the awful racism and the comments about our communities, I was disgusted. And I was disgusted because nobody who was non-Indigenous on the yes side leading this big, I'm for First Nations people, not one of those people stood up and said, hey, that's not on.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
No.
So there is a really strong sense and feeling and practice that non-Indigenous people can play without all of this. And that's be our strength in this fight that we are struggling, because we don't want to carry the burden of this racism. Please, please stand up and do not be a bystander when you hear it, when you see it, when you're near it. It's so much for our people.
Can I just jump in here? I 100% agree that racism has absolutely no place in Australia. That is what's so special about our country. Like, we really are a nation built of people who've come from all over the world and people who've been here.
But have you seen most of the
years.
comments on any? I mean, I watched the Prime Minister's live press conference the other day about the referendum, and I looked at all the comments, and they were full of racist filth.
Awful.
I'm not defending anybody's comments, but
I was shocked at the extent of it.
100%, and it's terrible. But when we're having this discussion, it's super emotionally charged, and I totally get that. This is impacting your lives, But we need
It's not even that it's emotionally charged, it's our life. Before a referendum, during, and
but we
most
need
likely
to.
post.
We also need to understand that some people, and quite a lot according to the latest news poll, 53% of people have very legitimate concerns about what the voice will mean for the functioning of our country, for the principle of equality in Australia between all races and all backgrounds. They're worried about the legal implications of this. They're worried about the fact that it's going to be permanent forever. And that, it might even be accountable to the High Court instead of the Parliament. As Jed was saying, how are we going to get the Parliament to actually listen to this voice?
But that has all been debunked, and a lot of
been debunked.
But it hasn't. Why is the no vote continuing to increase if it has been so conclusively debunked?
Because there's a lot of misinformation out there with a lot of what you just said, Freya, I'm afraid.
No.
I don't know if there's a causal link between facts and votes, always.
Correct, and we need...
Well, I think we have to understand...
Sorry, Freya, you go.
Australian people, we're not dumb. Like, we do look at the facts. We do look at what is in front of us on a ballot paper. And I think we have to respect the fact that it looks like the majority of Australians have some deep-seated concerns about this voice and key questions around who's going to be on this thing, what issues will they be able to advise on, how is this all going to work? Those haven't been answered. And
I can promise you it's not that powerful.
It's all the answers
I'll
are
let
there.
Darcy have a word.
Yeah, look, and I think I'd refer to the working group. I'll get the name wrong, but there's 8 principles of the voice, and I think, you know, if you look up any website, whether it be, you know, on Senator Stewart's website or Marcus's, you'll see the 8 principles of the voice. You will see part of the Uluru or Yulara statement of the heart is that it's really key and clear in there, and I think the scare tactics need to stop. It's people playing people off against each other, and I think that leading with misinformation will cause worse outcomes. As we've said, Aboriginal young people and Aboriginal community have high rates of suicide, 541 Aboriginal deaths in custody since the Royal Commission. You know, our children are still being taken by, you know, family policing, as Vanessa rightly said. The scare tactics need to stop, and I think that to make it very clear is that we are not a political pawn as Aboriginal community. We are people, we are community, and enough is enough.